Hello, welcome to Warley Live with Joseph from We Are Rail Fans. I'm on my phone. I tried to get on my laptop on my computer, and that's just gone in the canal at the back of the club. So we've had a few technical issues, but Joseph, welcome to Warley Club Rooms.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, nice to be here.
Quick look around. We are actually live in the club rooms, the first time since 2019, I think it is now. So yeah, it's good to be back and good to have you on. Good to have you the first video part of the club. So welcome.
Excellent.
So we worked together on the virtual events last November, and we were looking at the obviously Dovetail games and We Are Rail Fans. So can you just tell us a bit about We Are Rail Fans and what you're about?
Yeah, sure. So for those that don't know, We Are Rail Fans is it's kind of like an online rail community at the moment. It was set up last year in 2020 by Dovetail Games, and I'm sure we'll explain the link between those two organizations at some point. But We Are Rail Fans is basically a place we're trying to get all the different elements of the railway world, the railway fandom, railway enthusiasm into one place. So what we found is, there's quite a significant following for modelling, obviously, which is great, and clubs like yourself obviously do a lot to encourage that, which is brilliant, especially with the national show at the NEC as well. Photography has its own kind of little area where you have railway photographers that go and spot mainline charters on the on the main line and that kind of thing. Spotting obviously has its own following, a very strong following. It's been going many decades, probably almost a century now, I'd have thought, people spotting, and that's something that's growing as technology sort of advances and that kind of thing. But there's very few places where all these things come together, and that's really what we've tried to do with We Are Rail Fans. Now, a lot of people might be a little bit confused by the term rail fans. It is a slightly more American term. So it's basically what the Americans would describe as a rail enthusiast in the UK. But we've used that to really try and draw in a really broad audience. We want to bring as many people as we can into one place, irrespective of where they're from, where they might do their rail fanning or sort of their passion and their enthusiasm. So as I say, we've tried to bring all this stuff into one place, and at the moment, that's basically in the form of social media and on our website. So I'm the web editor, and on our website, we do a load of articles. We try and make them as diverse as we can. So we've done a few on modelling, although that's something we're going to try and do more of in the future, which again, I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. But we've also done articles on American locomotives, about heritage in the UK, about spotting, about photography, as many things as we can, basically. And we have, worked with certain partners in the industry. Obviously, we worked, with you last year with the virtual event. We've worked with the likes of Hornby and Pico. We've also worked with Amtrak, HS2. So we're not just looking to, sort of showcase those big brands, but we're also looking to talk about, you, the enthusiasts, you, the modelers, you, the rail fans, and try and bring it all into one place if we can. So I hope that gives people an idea of kind of what we're aiming to do. And as I say, most of that's done through our website at the moment, which is wearerailfans.com.
That's great. So you obviously go and check your websites out. You also do a newsletter that you send out as well, don't you? Which is quite informative and sharing, different clubs and hobbies and different parts of the rail, different sides of the rail fan. So like you said, with spotters and.
Yeah, so the newsletter, I think it goes out on a Friday. It largely publicises what we do on the website, although obviously when we have certain initiatives come up, like working with yourselves with Warley, we did our own virtual event earlier in the year, which was called Rail Fan Fest, and that was a joint collaboration between We Are Rail Fans and the other side of the Dovetail Games company, which I'm sure you'll know involves Train Simulator, the video game. So that was really successful, and again, we work with a lot of people. So yeah, the newsletter kind of churns out really what we're working on at the time, and as I say, more often than not at the moment, that's the articles that we're publishing on the website.
Okay, and if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, how do you do that?
So if you go to the website, there is a button top right of the website, I think, where you can pop your email address in and subscribe there. You can obviously also join us on social media. Facebook has our biggest following at the moment. We've got 20,000 followers on Facebook, and that's growing. That's been growing basically for the last 12 months, which is really, really good. And as I said, the audience is really, really broad. So we've got a really significant following in America, which is quite exciting. And for me, it's quite exciting because I don't really know too much about American railroads and that kind of thing. But we've also got quite a considerable UK base as well. And in the last few months, actually, we've seen quite a few people pop up from Australia, which is really nice because they've got a totally different way of working over there with their railroads. And again, modeling is a totally different thing down there. So yeah, if people go to the website, they can sign up to the newsletter, but otherwise they can just follow us on our social channels.
Yeah, to be fair, we did notice that with our virtual events, we normally attract mainly people in the UK, but obviously being a virtual presence, we're getting people from Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, South America, and across the whole of Europe, really tuning in and enjoying the event. So it's got its negative side being online, just virtual, but it's got a lot of positives as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think for an initiative like what we're aiming to do and bring all these elements together, that's brilliant. It's really good for us, and it's really good for everybody else. You get to learn an awful lot. One of the more frequent contributors to the website at the moment is a chap called Gary Dolezal, who is in America. In fact, I've got one of his books here that he wrote a few years ago called Steel Rails Across America. And he's a photographer mainly. I think he also did stuff for Trains magazine, which is a big magazine in the States. And, his articles are fantastic because I've learned so much about railroads just from reading those articles alone. He's done photography, some of the shots that he captures of these massive freight locomotives, freight trains, these EMDs and F units and things that I, a couple of years ago, wouldn't have known the first thing about. And yeah, having that online presence allows us to really draw in those kinds of people. In fact, just last week, we did an article about a station in Michigan. It's called Durand Station, very historic station. It was built in 1903. And that was just because a photographer in Detroit saw what we were doing and sent us some photographs and said, do you want to write an article about these photographs, or do you want to feature these photographs? And the weird thing about that was he wasn't necessarily a rail fan. He did like trains, but he was mainly a photographer. And he did stuff with the Detroit music scene. He takes photos of the Detroit music scene. But, he noticed what we were doing and trying to bring all these things together and sent us all these images. So, yeah, the online presence thing and allowing you to do an international sort of scope is really invaluable, I think, at the moment, particularly in the current times, I think.
Oh, brilliant. So I'm sure you've been at the Warley show before. I'm sure I know Dovetail Games have definitely been there before. How do you think that's going to change going forward with the shows and your presence? Do you think
That's an interesting one. Yeah, whether we are rail fans, has a presence at shows like Warley in the future, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, a lot of what we're doing is online at the moment, but we do want to move into having a physical presence in the real world. That's something that I think, will come with time. Whether that's here or in the States or whatever. I've been to the Warley show a few times, but mainly as a punter. So because I've worked with other rail organisations in the past before we are rail fans, and it's a great show. It's my uncle first took me to the Warley show in what would have been the mid '90s. So that was probably when things were starting to get pretty big, I'd have thought. And one of my first memories of model railways and we built a little 00 gauge layout in the attic, and it was a great memory, just the start of that whole enthusiasm for me, really. So yeah, whether we do have that physical presence in the future is a bit of an unknown at the moment, but it's something that we definitely look to, and we've definitely considered. As for Dovetail Games, they focus very much on the gaming industry. That's what they do. It's really interesting, actually. There's a big misconception that Dovetail Games and other gaming companies are sort of a competitor to the modeling industry. I think that's quite a widely held view by some people. But as you'll see from the T-shirt that I'm wearing, which is very on brand, it says "By enthusiasts for enthusiasts," and that's what Dovetail Games is. And particularly with the Trains franchise, all the people that work for the Train Simulator franchise with Dovetail Games, they're passionate modelers and spotters just as much as the hardcore modelers in model railway clubs are. And the idea that Train Simulator would do anything to diminish the modeling hobby is, that's awful. We wouldn't want that to happen at all. So I think it's really important to, consider that one of the reasons why this initiative is so important is it is trying to sort of cross-contaminate or cross-pollinate, probably is a better description, those areas of enthusiasm. We want people that play, or Dovetail Games certainly want people that play Train Simulator to go and pick up some tools and go modeling as much as the other way around. It's very much a collaborative thing.
Yeah.
So whether that has any scope on the Warley show in the future and how Dovetail Games present themselves, or how We Are Rail fans present themselves to the railway world, we don't know yet. But that's it's something we'll look at, definitely.
Definitely, it's definitely something for the future, isn't it? Really, and like you said, for me, games it's sort of a side by side. It gives you something a bit different to do when you don't want to be modelling. Sometimes you want to break from modelling and try something a bit different. And again, it could be used as sort of almost like a research project as well, because your games are very detailed. So you can, if you've got a section of line you want to sort of study, you can play the game and you can learn the characteristics of the line by driving the line, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that I'm an all-knowing expert on Train Simulator, because I'm very much with the We Are Rail Fans project, and so I don't necessarily work on the Train Sim franchise. Maybe that's something you want to do in the future. I'm sure we can arrange that if your viewers and members of your club would like to hear more about that. But what I would say is there are some parallels with modeling and Train Simulator, as you just alluded to. So, for example, if you're a DCC modeler, sound is really important to you, as getting the right sound from the locomotives that you're running. And in Train Simulator, of course, our developers, the Dovetail Games developers, they have that same aim. They want that sound to be as realistic and immersive as possible. And similarly with the scenery, scenery is massively important to modelers, to really immerse themselves in the layout that they're creating. And I know some of the layouts that your club have, created are just incredible. And you look at things like Miniature Wonderland, in Europe, and the level of detail is just insane. And again, there's parallels with Train Simulators, parallels with what they do to try and recreate that environment. As I say, it's difficult for me to say because I don't work with that arm of the business, if you like, but there's definite parallels, and it's really important that those two areas of the hobby work together where possible. And as you say, there are times when maybe you're a little bit frustrated with what you're doing modeling wise and you want a little break and maybe go and play a video game. And I'm sure likewise there's times when people playing video games want to take a break and do something with their hands. So they definitely can complement one another, and it's a big misconception, I think, that they compete, because that's not what either industry is out there to do. It's all about working together.
Absolutely. So talk about yourself, Joseph. What brought you into the hobby, and in the first place, where did you start out?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, one of my first railway memories, if you like, was going to the Warley show in the 90s. And I had an uncle who actually I think might be stewarding for the show this year, or at least he's been asked to. So you might see him. I don't know. His name's Gary. He helped us set up a 00 gauge in the loft in the attic. And funnily enough, a couple of weeks ago, I went up into the attic of it's a different house now, to go and try and find some of those models, because I haven't modeled, since I was a kid. I haven't done anything with railway modeling really in that time. And we ran an article on it. So one of last week's We Are Rail Fans articles explained what it was like to just sort of root out some of those old locos that you've got in the loft. And I took some quite good pictures of them. I've done a bit of a show and tell here. I've actually got some with me. So that was what we spent most of the time running, which was a Deltic. It still does run, I believe, although I don't know. It's probably been about 20 years since it last hit the tracks. And the other one that we spent a lot of time running was this little Class 11 shunter. And that was great, So that's where it all started for me, really. And then my parents took me and my brother always on holiday to North Wales, so we would always do in Llangollen and Festiniog and Snowdon Mountain Railway. We lived in the Black Country at the time, in Wednesbury. So North Wales was kind of the ideal holiday destination for us, and there's so many little great railways in Wales, so we'd always go and see them as a family. And then we moved down to Seaton as a family about 15, 17 years ago, something like that. And so we went to school here. I went to school in Lyme Regis. And of course, leaving school in a rural coastal town in a place like Seaton, job opportunities aren't as diverse as they might be in the Black Country or in Birmingham or wherever you happen to be based. So I did a few bits and bobs, and then a job came up at Peakorama, which is the tourist attraction arm of Pico. And my brother went there first, and he worked there for a couple of years, and then he said, "Oh, there's another job going if you're interested, Joe." So I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'm at a loose end, really. I could do with some cash. I'll see what it is." And I ended up working in the ice cream hut at Peakorama, selling, Mr. Whippies and all that kind of thing. But of course, then that kind of reinvigorated some of that interest in trains, because I was working for this big modelling brand, the Streamline Track and all the great things and great products that they model. And of course, there's the Beer Heights Light Railway as well, which is a fantastic miniature railway. It's currently open at the moment. They opened at the end of May. So we worked there for a few years. Tom, my brother, worked there for about 5 years. I worked there for just over 3. And I ended up being the assistant manager there. So I was dealing with coach companies and birthday parties and just giving everyone a really good time, which was really nice. But on the side of doing all that tourism stuff, we obviously got to learn quite a bit about modeling. Tom, my brother, is actually much more of a keen modeler than I am. And again, a bit of show and tell here. He's got this diorama of an N gauge. Don't know how well you can see that, with a little locomotive on it. So he's much more enthusiastic about it than about the modelling aspect than I am. But we both love trains. And then after that, I decided to kind of upgrade from miniature railways to proper railways, and I ended up working for the West Somerset Railway in Minehead, which was great fun. Loads of amazing memories there. I lodged in a few different places all around the area: Stigumber and Blue Anchor and Dunster and Minehead and all those places. And that was kind of the pinnacle of rail enthusiasm for me, because all of a sudden you're working for this steam railway, which is what you rode on as a child, and that was great fun. And then one thing led to another, and I moved on and I went to something else. And I'm a keen writer. I do a lot of writing in my spare time. And of course, then the opportunity came up with this We Are Rail Fans project, and they needed someone who could try and draw on some of that railway content. And so with a bit of experience from Pico and a bit of experience from the West Somerset Railway and just a general sort of enthusiasm for railways, they sort of got me on board as the web editor. And so I'm collating and writing and helping kind of curate all this content, through We Are Rail Fans. So it's been a bit of a journey, but it's great, and I'm very privileged really to be in this position, because it's a job where I can really be proud of what I'm doing through my hobby and through passion and all that kind of thing, which is great. So a bit of a strange way it came about, but really, really nice. That's where my sort of story is at the moment, if you like.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very varied sort of very few years really. You've gone from sort of it's quite an interesting start, and I suppose it's always been involved in the trains and model railways, isn't it? Really, even when you're playing with the big stuff, you still keeps you interested in models. Yeah,
I mean, I distinctly remember, it can be hard working in those industries. Tourism, it's very busy. It can be pressured during the peak season, during the summer. And I remember someone telling me when I was working at Minehead Station, they said, whenever you feel like it's, having a really tough day, things aren't going your way, or it's, you're finding it quite hard, just go and stand on the platform and watch a train leave. And all of a sudden you're reminded of why you do what you do. And it's absolutely right. And it was a great piece of advice, because it can be a very pressured working environment, working in tourism. And, Heritage Railway, some do better than others. And, it can be very tough financially. It can be very tough to organise events, galas and all that kind of thing. And, that puts a lot of pressure on not just paid staff, but also volunteers as well. And again, I was very lucky to be a paid member of staff at the West Somerset Railway, but there are hundreds of volunteers that work just as hard. And to just take an afternoon, just go and, a lunch break, half an hour lunch break, and just go and sit on the platform and watch a train leave Minehead Station. It just reminded you of why you do this, why people get so enthused about it, why people are so happy about it. And it was the same thing at Pico, because you have the main thing about Peakorama was it was Pico's back when it started in the 70s. It was Pico's attempt to try and spark that interest in kids and families, so that later in life, when they had the money to maybe invest in a model railway and buy the track and buy the locomotives, that they'd remember their childhood holiday at Pico, and it would kind of encourage that. And again, to know that you're part of that, and to kind of look at the trains going and the kids having fun and all that kind of thing. That's really nice, you know, and it reminds you, as I say, I've said it 3 times now, but it reminds you why you do jobs like that. And if there's ever anyone out there that's working in rail that doesn't enjoy it, my advice would be exactly the same as the advice I was given, which is just step back and, just remind yourself of why you're doing it, because you love trains. And that's a great adage, I think, to take from that industry.
So obviously, just mentioned kids and children's interest in the hobby. Obviously, Warley, we've got a junior club, junior student members part of the club. We do a lot of things with juniors and students and kids at the show with the Pico kit builds. It is really important to get kids into the hobby and for kids to grow within the hobby. What are you trying to do to encourage them with obviously we are rail fans? Where do you sort of encourage you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, actually. I'm not sure it's one we've been asked before. It's very interesting when you start a project like We Are Rail Fans, seeing where your audience takes you. And of course, when you start posting things about railways and trains, your audience can maybe grow in a way that you don't expect, and or maybe in a way that you do expect. So at the moment, our fan base is it's not children, it's not kids, but of course it is a lot of people that have families. And we need to, I think, maybe at some point look at whether we can tailor some content towards families and children, because it is a really important part of the hobby. And one way, I think, a really good way into that, or certainly from my point of view, a really good way into that, is technology. So looking at ways that technology can help help spark an interest in the hobby. Again, it's that competitive thing. People think, technology must work against model railways or work against puzzles or other sort of traditional hobbies. But I think there's every opportunity for technology to have a place in that. So not so much for children, but certainly for younger rail enthusiasts. One example I can give is we ran an article recently about Rail Record. Now, I'm sure some of your club members might know of Rail Record. It's an online, basically a train tracking tool for the UK network. So you can use it to track train services, and that's good for spotters and photographers and people that just want to see different services go by. And you think, well, if it's for spotters, that's quite a traditionalist thing. It's maybe for sort of pure rail fans. But actually, by putting it in a digital format and having this website, Rail Record, where you can engage with it on your mobile phone and you can track things easily. It doesn't rely on having to talk to a guard at a station or know inside knowledge from a certain railway. It's right there at your fingertips. And using tools like that, I think, can really be good for younger enthusiasts in encouraging them to then go out and photograph and spot. And I'm sure there's plenty of things with modeling as well, like the ability to control your layout from your mobile phone, for example. It's a great tool in trying to teach young people, and I think that probably is relevant for children, because I know a lot of children do have smartphones these days, rightly or wrongly. It's a great way for them to engage with the hobby. So I think that's something we will look at in the future. As I say, we've not yet done anything that's really keyed up for children specifically, but certainly younger rail enthusiasts is an audience that we want to work with, and we want to encourage, and we want to enthuse and spark that interest like we've done with other parts of the demographic.
Absolutely. I think you've hit a good topic there, because Hornby have just released their new DC system, which is controlled with smartphones and tablets, and that's really right up sort of youngsters sort of having using it really, because I know people always complain kids are always on phones, but if they're on a phone and they're doing some constructive with it, it's got to be a good thing. So people like Hornby jumping on this bandwagon of the new system with it's got to be another good thing for the hobby. It's another way of keeping youngsters involved and interested.
It is, definitely. And, I think it's something also that, organisations like Heritage Railways look at to try and engage children. I think parents are always going to take their children to Heritage Railways on holiday, places like Minehead or North Wales or wherever you happen to be, and not just in the UK, in America or Europe or whatever. It's a really popular thing to do. But when they get there, I mean, when I worked for the West Somerset Railway, sometimes one criticism might have been that that particular line is really long. It's about an hour and a half to get from Bishop's Lydia to Minehead. Now, of course, in a normal year, you can get on and off in between. So it's up to the people on board really to decide how long they want that journey to be. But some people did say, it's a bit of a long journey. The kids can get a little bit irritated. So, in situations like that, there's a lot of cost involved, so it's not possible for every heritage railway. But there's always the opportunity, I think, to try and engage with those children and try and do something that's going to interest them. And that can sometimes involve technology. I saw recently there was the the Swanage Railway have got that information board now in the ticket office, and it uses the real-time trains tracking system, which hopefully we've got an upcoming feature on real-time trains coming up hopefully in the next couple of weeks, so people should look out for that. But anything, it applies across the whole hobby, whether it's heritage rail, modelling, spotting, photography. This idea that we can get technology on board to really engage with children. Again, there's always going to be those people that say it's not pure, it's not proper, we need to take the phones off them and that kind of thing. I think any opportunity to try and make use of it in a positive, constructive way, like you've just said, so that they're doing good or doing something productive or proactive, that's really important. So, I think you're absolutely right.
Absolutely. And also you got things like a lot, I know Severn Valley have done like Harry Potter nights on the railway, and they do a murder mystery on the railway. Again, it's something a bit different, and it brings people into the brings people onto the attractions that wouldn't normally go on the train. So again, it's all good, isn't it? Really,
it is. And once you've had that first visit, whether you were a rail enthusiast or not, I mean, neither of my parents were rail enthusiasts. They just took us to heritage railways because it was something to keep us occupied, But that obviously had an impact on me. It had an impact on my brother, and I'm sure there are people that took their children to a heritage railway over Christmas. Maybe a lot of them were running over Christmas, including West Somerset, and that it might only be one visit, but for the children, it can really be you can plant a seed in their minds, and it is really important to have that first step, if you like. And events like Christmas, Halloween, Murder Mystery, children's events, character days, Thomas Days with Thomas, of course, they're really popular. That we went to plenty of those when I was a kid. So they are really important. Anything that can be done to engage children is insurance for the future of the hobby at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Because without another generation coming, without whether it's someone of my age or your age or a child or a teenager, that's the future of the hobby, and the idea that some people may not like that, well, you got to kind of live with it, really. That's,
absolutely.
That's it.
You got to educate the next generation and pass on the skills, otherwise it dies.
Exactly. We I won't give away too much about it because it's something that we've not released yet. But we just recently recorded a podcast with a train driver in the UK. We've got a We Are Rail Fans podcast. We've got one episode out at the moment, which was with Ben Ando, the former BBC News correspondent, and he's got his own model railway company called Revolution Trains.
Okay.
Anyway, we've got another episode coming out in the next few weeks, which is with a train driver. I won't say who for or what he drives, but he used to drive an older class of locomotive and now drives a newer class of locomotive. And one of the points he made towards the end of the podcast was that that new class of locomotive is popular or not is immaterial. In the future, there will be children and teenagers and young people that are getting involved with rail now. For those people, that class of locomotive will define the hobby for them, in the same way that the class 50 might define the hobby for some people, or a Castle class steam locomotive might define the hobby for other people. So this progression of rail, some people turn their nose up at it. Oh, we don't like electric, or we don't like HS2, or we don't like it. It's the future of rail. And for some people, it will define rail for them, and they'll be the enthusiasts of the future, and it will keep the hobby alive.
Absolutely. I keep getting reminded, because in the club, I'm quite a modern image modeler. And a lot of the members seem to say, well, your modern image isn't that modern image now compared to youngsters, because I modelled the 80s and the 90s. Well, you forget that's what, 25, 30 years ago now. So it's I'm not modern, am I really? But it's everyone picks their own thing to enjoy, and you get different people, different ages, who like different things as well. You've got youngsters who are very much steam modelers, even though they never even grew up seeing them on the main line. It's a hobby for all, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, again, going back to the West Somerset Railway, I remember there was one day when there was a diesel substitution. Something had gone wrong, and they had to substitute a steam locomotive for a diesel. And there was a group, I think it was a coach company or something, traveling on this train. I said, "I'm really sorry, you've had the steam locomotive come the one way, but you're going to have a diesel going back." And they were like, "Oh no, that's really disappointing. I don't like modern trains." And I said, "Whoa, hang on a sec. No, this diesel's not modern. It was built like 40 years ago. It's a Class 33, or I don't know what. I think it was a Class 33. It's a heritage diesel locomotive. It's not new." And they were like, "Oh wow, well that's great." So there's this like misconception that like diesel is modern, and actually like diesel's not modern anymore.
So that's been interesting. So what can we expect going forward from Rail fans? What is it? Can you give us any? Obviously, you talked about the Driver podcast. What else can we expect? Or what?
Yeah, so the podcast is something we've got in the works. We've got a couple of episodes recorded. We're going to have more recorded. It's going to be a full series. It's going to be focusing on drivers to begin with. So we really want to get a kind of behind the scenes look at what some of the drivers experience, what it's like to drive certain classes of locomotive. And all the things that go with that, and the ones that we've recorded so far have been really interesting. So and a lot of fun as well. So yeah, that's one thing that subscribers to the podcast or followers of We Are Rail Fans can look forward to. We've got obviously more articles that are going to be coming up, and as I said at the very start of this chat, one area that we've perhaps not engaged as well as other areas like photography and spotting is modeling. So we want to hear from modelers, and we want to engage with modelers as much as we can, wherever they're from, whether they're a member of the Warley Club, whether they're from a club in a railroad modeling club in America or anywhere in the world. We want to hear more from modelers. We want to see your photographs. We want to learn more about your layouts. We want to learn more about modeling techniques. It's not something that we've done a huge amount with. In fact, the most really we did with modeling was for the Rail Fan Fest in April, because we had the likes of Hornby and Pico getting on board with us. So it's something we want to do more of. If we can get in touch with modelers, if people can give us some information, if people can share with us their passion and their hobby, then obviously we're going to try and produce more content around that. I think that's something that we'd really like to do. So, but there's always going to be other stuff coming out. We're going to produce content about as much as we can to do with rail. As I say, we work with a lot of big companies. We work with a lot of enthusiasts, from the biggest of companies to the individuals on the ground, So we've got lots of things in the pipeline that we've, planned around content like that. Articles, social media posts. We've got a Facebook group now. We Are Rail Fans Facebook group. We want to do more with that. We want people to have a dialogue with us. We want people to talk about what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, what some of the challenges are about being a rail enthusiast. We want to try and keep it as positive as possible, but also we want to try and, make sure we get all those views and opinions from people. So, lots to look forward to. But the podcast in particular is something going to be really, really interesting. And I'd encourage everybody, once that second episode comes out, subscribe. And, we're really looking forward to that. It's a really great initiative for us.
So if people want to share their images and a bit of blurb about what they're doing and what they're building, how can they send it to you?
So there's three ways, basically. There's a submission form on our website. Now, the submission form is a little bit difficult because it can only accept links. It can't accept files. So if you've got photographs on Flickr, for example, or Google Drive, then you can paste the links into the submission form. And as long as you tick the boxes to say we can kind of repost them or reuse them, then that's great. We can run an article about it, maybe. If you want to send, like that chap with the station, the photographer last week, if you want to send us maybe 10 photographs, but you're not really much of a writer, well, we can write an article about your layout, for example. That's one way that you can engage with us. So that's the one way. The second way is you can get in touch with us on social media, post us some pictures on Facebook. We've got plenty of posts. We do at least a post a day. You can reply to some of the comments, post some pictures in there. We've got an Instagram account, and we do a post every Friday where if you use the hashtag #WeAreRailFans, we pick one photo that's with that hashtag and we display it on our page. That's a great way if you've just started on Instagram, maybe taking photographs of your layout or of real life locomotives, and you maybe want to grow your own following, then we can help you do that. If you submit with the hashtag #WeAreRailFans, we can we might choose your picture, for example, one week. So that's another way of doing it. And if all of that fails and you'd rather just send us an email, then you can send us an email at contact@wearerailfans.com. And that will come through to me and my colleague Emma. We look through, we get submissions most days. And again, as long as you sort of make it clear that you're happy for us to reshare it or talk about it, or then we'll do what we can with it. And give us some social links. Tag in your model railway club, tag in the heritage railway that you went to, tag in, because we want to spread the word for those organizations as much as we do our own. So yeah, 3 ways to get in touch: email, social media, or the submission form.
If people got their own YouTube channel, are you happy to for them to send a link to that as well, so they can share their own content?
Yeah, so we've got our own YouTube channel, the We Are Rail Fans YouTube channel, and there is a playlist that we have, and it's of videos that have been submitted to us by rail fans. And there's loads of stuff on there. There's stuff from Japan, there's stuff from America, there's model railroading stuff, there's obviously UK heritage stuff. So that is a way people can do that. Yeah,
that's brilliant. Well, it's been really good talking to you. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. So we were a bit late starting because we had a few computer issues. I normally work from home, and the desktop is all set up for StreamYard and work comes straight on. But my laptop had a definite meltdown when it arrived at the club room this afternoon. So I'm on my phone. It's not ideal, but it's. I think we made it work. To be fair, Joseph, I think it's been all right.
Yeah, hopefully people have got an idea of what we do and what we are. Yeah, I mean, no problem with the delay. That was fine. I'm just, I'm thankful that you've given us the opportunity to have a chat. I hope people, understand and enjoy what we do. And if anyone's got any questions, we can answer them maybe in the comments or drop us an email. But no, it's been great, Andy. I really appreciate the time. It's been good fun.
Well, thanks, Joseph, and hopefully we'll see you again. Hopefully in November, if we can get back to the show, and we'll see you then. So
yeah,
thanks very much.
No, thanks very much, and good luck with the show.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.